I think the only person missing is Dr. Throckmorton, and he told me that he was on a plane tonight and he may or may not be able to join, but we have Dr. Jawa here, so I think we're okay to start. Do you guys, is it okay with everyone if we start?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. I have prepared a little presentation for tonight, so I don't know if you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. So welcome everyone. What Dr. Kuhn and I are trying to do over the next few weeks is to try to meet with the different committees that are involved with the many activities that go on at ASES, and combine basically two activities. One is to understand how things are going, what are the ongoing activities that have been going on over the last year or two or three, and then what's in your future, in your own judgment, but also to share the strategic plan that we have put together so that we can hopefully over the next 5 years complete all the items. Jed, anything you want to add before we kick off the meeting from your side?
No, I just want the committee to understand that this was a process that took about a year to develop, and we had input from all different people in the society. And they had themes that they wanted to develop, and then they ultimately boiled down to specific tasks, and these tasks are being assigned to the chairs of the specific committees. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Jed. And feel free to interject anytime. So, as we talked about, Dr. Kuhn and I are going to have meetings with basically every committee in groups of 2 or 3 when they have some type of connection. And the goal for today, hopefully in less than an hour, will be to review the new ASES strategic plan, identify action items of this plan that are directly related tonight to industry in both the ASES side and the foundation side, review other possible action items that I know you guys have going on that Rob and Andy and Quinn were kind enough to share before this call, and then kind of summarize what is it that your committee wants to accomplish over the next cycle between now and October next year. And I don't know, but I always like to start with the mission statement of ASES because I really like it, thinking about how we are trying to serve our patients, first and foremost, our members also, and then the society at large, by advancing shoulder and elbow care, but also the foundation, which has the mission statement of developing resources to advance shoulder and elbow care. So tonight, we're going to review your committee, but I think it's useful to think about how is it that ASES is structured, and this is so complicated. I don't know how Jed was able to make sense of this because there is so much going on, but just looking at the squares that are in blue here on your left, this, in my view, is what helps our members. So we have the membership committee that takes care of the members, of course, and who is a member and who is not, the member experience committee, and then within that, the early career engagement and mentorship. Then we have emphasis, of course, on DEI. There is technology with the VR task force, advocacy, ethics, finance, and then you guys, industry. And there is a new certification task force that Dr. Miniachi is running. Then you have all the education that we do, including not only the journal club and the practice management and the podcast, but the different programs. We do the annual meeting, the near circle, a specialty, the fellows day, the fellows course. There is an upcoming revision arthroplasty course, maybe an elbow course, and then we have the ASA review panel. Then we have all the issues with our internal fellowship in North America, the fellows that come from Australia and Europe and China and India. And then there is some awards that also come through JSCS. And then we have all the research activities with not only our research committee, but the multi-center studies. And Andy Jawa is probably the best example of that. Then we have the nominating committee and the committees on committees. So Jed and I are going to be meeting with all of these people to see if we can, over the next 2 months, understand what is it that we can accomplish in a year, and then, of course, in the following 5 years. So tonight, super grateful to have a Queen that I know is behind, and then Andy, but also Armand Hatsidakis and Nilo Fardegan. We all know each other really, really well, so I don't think there is a need for much of an introduction. But I really want to showcase the incredible work that Jed has done with the strategic plan. I mean, I can tell you that The document that he created is just incredible and so detailed and so well organized. And I thought that for every committee member, we can basically draw the big lines of the plan. And then after that, we can go specifically into the industry committee. So when this group that Dr. Kuhn leadered with the help of an outside company, try to understand what can we do to make ASES even better over the next 5 years. These are the 4 items that came to place. One is, how can we make it more valuable for members so that they feel engaged and they feel that there is value in being an ASES member? Number 2, how do we become the leaders worldwide in shoulder and elbow education? That's the second big pillar if you read the plan in detail. The third is a combination of high quality research and also advocacy, politically and otherwise, both of them to benefit patient care. And finally, organizationally, we have grown substantially. We have the ASES, the foundation, the journal, our central office. How do we become effective and sustain? And then again, Jed, if you have any comments, feel free to comment. Anything that you want to add about these 4 pillars?
No, keep going. You're doing great.
Perfect. Thank you. This is all your work, so I am indebted to you. So on the first pillar, for the member engagement, what the committee thought is that if you don't understand your members, you can never really help them. So one goal is to understand members. The second is to grow membership, and you will see how when we come back to the assignments for these 2 committees, this is really directed to one task that will be asked specifically from you. We also want to make sure that members that are fellows, candidates, associate, active, emeritus, near circle, everyone has a specific reason to be part of ASES. And we, of course, want to promote the overall value proposition of ASES to our members. Number 2, education. And I love this. So 3 main pillars. One is that we want to be a comprehensive source of education. Number 2, which I think Jed really mastered this year, how do you innovate live educational experiences? Like he always says, it's more about networking than about learning. It's a combination, of course, but how do we innovate the live education? Number 3, all this digital content. How can we members access it so that it's curated, comprehensive, and accessible so that people can say, I want to find a video on total elbow for fracture or a hemi with pyrocarbon like Armand has popularized so much. And also, which is something we haven't done so far as ASES, reach out to communities, to patients, maybe to physical therapists. That's still kind of in the works. Number 3, going into research and advocacy, maintain advocacy, which I think our political advocacy committee is just incredible. And in the research area, we need to define what are the goals, have an agenda, and foster the infrastructure that's already present with the multi-center studies, hopefully generate and disseminate standards. And then our organization needs to grow as a brand and make sure that we have enough money, like the nuns of Mayo used to say, no money, no mission. So how can we get more revenue, which is also part of your task, and optimize finances, and how to enhance operations with technology, like maybe AI or new software that Ana Quintanilla has been looking into, and processes. So this, in a nutshell, is the ASES strategic plan that is 7 pages long, and it has like 1 million specific action items. And again, Jed, anything you want to add to the group about all this plan you created with the help of everyone?
Yeah, well, the only thing I would say is, this is going to be a shared thing. And as it turns out, your committee does not have as much to do as a lot of committees. So don't start freaking out.
So as some of you know, in preparation for this meeting, I was asking, what is it that the industry committee does? And just to provide some historic context, there was a very large committee on the ASES side that was sunset. The reason was that the foundation and ASES were going after industry resources or money at the same time, and there was a lot of confusion. So the decision was made to essentially transfer all the communication between ASES as a whole and industry to the foundation. So the foundation industry committee, which is led by Andy and Bad Quinn, has been basically working on this, especially over the last couple of years. But then sometimes in the central office, Angela, especially who runs all the educational programs, she finds it difficult sometimes to get quick access to industry. So we created this year a new entity, which is part of the ASES as opposed to the foundation, which is where Armand and Nilo come into place. And hopefully the four of you guys can work together. And after we finish with this very short presentation, I will ask Angela her thoughts about what goes where, because I think Rob Harkey will be working more closely with Quinn, Andy, and his committee. But then Angela and Shannon, who are dealing with educational programs, may have to maybe rely more on Anand and Nilo. And I think the four of you guys can work together. So these are the things that I understand the ASES Foundation Industry Committee is doing as of now. This is information I got from Andy, from Quinn, and from Robert over the last 2 days. So they help create a comprehensive portfolio of offerings so that when we go to industry, as a society, we can say, okay, these are our programs. The weekly, short and endeavor program, the Fellows Day, the ASES Fellows Course, the annual meeting, and so on. Then I understand, and Andy, you can maybe chime in here, there is phone calls that the committee makes with leaders of industry, typically in the summer, because that's when they're working on their budgets for the following year. So you want to get into their books before July or August, if all possible. Then there is these face-to-face interactions that used to happen at AAOS and happen for the first time at ASES this year. They also create the request for proposals for the mentor-mentee meeting with presence by one of their members as a liaison. There is a similar biomed DEI initiative that has been run by the ASES Foundation Industry, and there is this trends in shoulder arthroplasty that I think is in the second round by Andy Green and others. So Andy, anything I'm missing here of things that are ongoing at this point, or any comments you want to make?
Yeah, I think this covers it very well. And the key is just constantly touching base with the industry liaisons, seeing how we can help them, what we can offer them. And really what I will say is 4 years ago, this really wasn't here. And it's sort of thanks to Joe and Rob and other people have sort of developed this cadence over time. So it's still a work in progress, but I think we're getting there.
Yeah, to my eyes, this is so much, like it's incredible to dig into the different committees. It is just incredible how much activity there is at ASES. And I'm actually so proud of this society because to me, this is a perfect plan to gain resources from industry. Now, things that
Can I just throw a few things in there?
Yeah, of course.
I think.
How are you?
Hey, sorry, I was late. I'm getting picked up at the airport here. But,
thank you.
You bet. The two other things I think that are kind of the big ticket items are the fellowship support grant, and also we're trying to get the funding, continue the funding for the traveling fellowships. So those are probably bigger ticket items that we're pursuing.
Yeah, and that I have that, Quinn, thanks to you in the next slide, because I know that what we have here is what it's already scheduled and happening, and it's very clear, right? You have a portfolio, talk to the companies in the summer, follow up in October, and then the activities. But then ongoing and future, which I think is a lot of work, is I think both Andy and Quinn mentioned that there is this intention of possibly do another type of survey that is now on rotator cuff repair, which I think will be also very appealing to industry. I think this is not launched, if I understand correctly. There is also this idea of having a subcommittee to find other revenue areas. This came from the ASES Foundation Strategic Plan. Can you talk to, I don't know, they talked about Ford maybe, or Federal Express or Amazon, companies that are at high risk for injuries, or device manufacturers that are not making implants, like Donjo is making shoulder immobilizers, for example, or bracing by Aircast, or hospitals. So how can we diversify revenue? That's another thing that is either in the thinking or starting. And then very important, Quinn, because there is a lot of confusion and work to do. How do we support the North American fellows? That's one bucket. How do we support and how many traveling fellowships? So after we go through the whole round, of meetings that Jed and I are planning to have, we probably will come back to you guys to connect with the chair of the fellowship committee and the chairs of the Travel Fellowship Committee. Once we have all the information, but I'm just trying tonight to summarize what I think is going on and leave plenty of time for discussion. And as Dr. Kuhn mentioned, when you look at the action items that Ana Quintanilla kind of distilled for each of the different committees, this is the only new thing that, if possible, we would ask that you guys do together as part of the strategic plan. So this aligns with this thing I told you about growing the members. One thing that we know is that there may be very high volume shoulder elbow surgeons out there that have chosen not to be ASES members. Maybe they like arthroscopy, maybe they like sports, maybe they're into AOS, or maybe no societies. So the question is, can we find who those people are and provide that list to the member experience committee so then they can target them and say, hey, we know you do 300 shoulder cases a year and you're not an ASES member. Let me explain to you what an ASES member is. Do you want to be a member? So that aligns with this idea of, if we want ASES to be appealing to members and show the engagement and the value proposition, can we target individuals that we know are high volume for shoulder and elbow, but have chosen not to be ASES members? Jed, am I understanding this correctly? Anything you want to add here?
Yeah, exactly right. So, our growth traditionally has been by people that have come out of our fellowships, but there are a ton of people that come out of our fellowships that aren't members and have for years. I mean, I'm thinking about my fellowship class, and there's at least 2 or 3 guys who do a lot of shoulder and elbow work who aren't members of our society. And so we want to reach out to them and make them feel welcome and invite them to become members. And so one way to find these people is to ask our industry partners, who do they see as the high volume surgeons that may not necessarily be part of our group? And then we'll develop a marketing strategy to approach them and let them know all the things that we offer and see if they might be interested in joining. One thing that crossed my desk recently was, in the Journal of Shoulder and Elbow Surgery, we give the board articles that they use for the maintenance of certification when you go through that WLA process where you review the articles and fill out the multiple choice questions and they get recertified for your boards. And I have all the list of everybody that pulled one of our shoulder and elbow articles to do their recertifications. So I actually just sent that to Steve today to cross-reference it with our member list, and then we're going to have this pile of people who use shoulder and elbow articles to recertify but aren't part of our society. That's another group we're going to reach out to. So the concept for you guys would be to talk to the industry partners and say, hey, who are the high volume guys in that use your products that aren't members, or even if they don't know if they're members or not, just give us a list and then we'll do the rest.
I think it's a great idea. And a quick question. I have been on the member committee for a little while. And so what is our minimum percent of shoulder and elbow cases now as a candidate member? I remember it used to be 50%, I think, or 70%. Has that changed over time? Do we have a specific percent that we're asking for?
I think it's 50%. So
Okay.
if I remember correctly, that's the number.
Fair enough. So Jed, would it be fair to also ask the industry partners, even if it's not 200 cases, but maybe even ask them who they think are doing a lot of shoulder and elbow surgery, maybe even 50%, and try to get those folks who maybe aren't huge volume, but kind of in that mid-range, so we can increase the membership?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I don't know if our industry partners are going to know how many knee scopes these guys do.
Sure.
But yeah, if they see somebody that's doing a fair high volume of cuffs or arthroplasties or elbow work, we should definitely be able to reach out to them.
Awesome.
Wouldn't it be a lot easier to make it easier for people to get membership? I mean, at the OTA, there's really no restrictions in terms of how many trauma cases you do. And I realize ASES is a lot better than it was in the past, but I mean, lowering that threshold makes it much easier to increase your numbers.
Well, that's a great comment. Our membership criteria has changed every year, and the membership committee reevaluates it every year and looks to see what criteria they think is important. I will say this, though, there is something special about being in our group, and we are going to offer more educational opportunities for people that aren't in our group with open meetings. And that's one of the other things on the agenda. So even if we find people that may not be interested in joining, we can still help educate them and help get them involved by being involved in the open side of things, which is going to grow tremendously over the next 5 years.
And then the other comment, Nilo, is that if you feel strongly like that, feel free to contact the chairs of the membership committee and see how they think. Like yesterday, they constantly evaluate how this should be done. No one has proposed to have an open society where you can basically pay your dues and you're in. But these may be people that they just never thought that they wanted to be members because they finished their fellowship, they went to private practice, and then life goes on. So we want to recover all those people that we want to train and, make sure that they get the best access to shoulder and elbow care through our society.
Just to add on to that, I think that a lot of those folks don't think that ACS is still very hyper exclusive, and they might not feel that they're candidates when they actually are. When I talk to a lot of people like that, and
Yeah, especially people who've been in practice for 15 years, Armand, they may not know that things have changed because they never looked again.
Exactly. And just to add one thing to what Nilo said, in speaking to industry about what their aims are, they really want to target non-ASCS people. They want to target the total joint surgeons, the sports people who do shoulder arthroplasty, for instance, and that's a main interest of theirs. So I was just thinking about being on this committee, and thank you for the invitation, but I thought immediately, like, what's the membership drive right now? What's the prime directive from the presidential line and the executive committee, on how exclusive we want to be. So it's good to know we're staying at 50%. But I think it's really something it's an interesting discussion. Like if you got it down to 30% or something, or made it even a little more accessible, would you then get more members, but also get the industry partners to fork out more funds for the events, because we're getting those people to our quote closed meetings to educate them. So it's just very interesting. The whole topic is fascinating. So it'd be good discussions coming.
I think that's a great point where people think it's still an exclusive club that they aren't invited to. Have you guys done anything at, let's say, ANA or AAOS having some kind of reception or putting it out there that, hey, our criteria has changed, we're accepting new members, doing something social so people are more aware of it? Because ANA is pretty, high hit rate, I would imagine.
Yeah, so well, there's a lot going on to answer that question. There's actually discussion between ANA and AOSSM about combining as one group, which is a whole different thing we have to strategize around, which is kind of interesting. So, but you bring up a really good point, and again, we're just showing you a little bit of what this 5-year plan looks like, but that's things like that are certainly in the 5-year plan. Any meeting we co-sponsor, like Joe's 360 meeting, or any other the SDSI meeting in San Diego, any meeting that ASES kind of co-sponsors, we hope to have a booth there and recruit members while they're at that meeting. And again, that's another way to get people that aren't currently part of ASES engaged and want them to come and join us. So we have a huge strategy and all different facets of trying to grow and collect those people that should be part of us but aren't right now. And again, your task in this committee would be to work with our industry partners to help identify who those people might be.
So I thought that we should also complete the call understanding what activities are out there that need funding. Of course, the annual meeting needs funding, but typically gets auto-funded. But we also have to think about how we're going to continue to fund, if we can, the ACS Fellows Day, the Residents and Fellows course. There is a revision plastic course that Dr. Nandari and Tesari are putting together. One of the initiatives of the strategic plan is to create a elbow course that may take place every 2 years or every 3 years, and there are webinars, podcasts, and doc matters. So one thing that we have to think with you guys is, with the Residents and Fellows course, for example, which I'm helping with this year, I have learned that industry is coming back to us saying, we already gave money to the foundation, we're not supporting the course directly. So I think we have to come up with a budget for the year so that we know the things we have to fund, how much can we fund individually through efforts that Angela leads with Sharon and others, and how much do we have to expect that will come from the ASES Foundation, since this committee now is basically trying to be a single voice, basically, for the ACS for income. So before we go to the discussion, I just listed here things that, as I said, are going on. So the new one would be, like we talked about, if you can get a list of high volume elbow and shoulder surgeons that industry has identified that we know that they are not ASES members, and once we have that list, we can send it to the Member Experience Committee. The other things that are there are already happening. The comprehensive portfolio, the phone calls, the interactions, helping with the mentor-mentee meeting, the DI initiative with Similar Biomed, and the shoulder trends. And then the new things we talked about is maybe a new initiative on the market survey for rotator cuff, different areas of revenue, and really clarify fellowship education grants and traveling fellowship. So for me, when I look at this list, it's actually pretty ambitious and comprehensive. And what I want to make sure is that you guys think this is doable, that there is enough resources, that we're not asking for too much, and any comments or questions that you may have. So maybe we can open it for discussion. And before we go any further, maybe Angela, you can chime in and tell us what would be the expectations from the ACS Central Office about the position of Dr. Hatzidakis and Dr. Degan as they work with Dr. Throckmorton and Dr. Jawa.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Sanchez-Sotelo. And thank you everybody for being on this call. One of the challenges that we face with some of our live events is that there is a lot of competition for industry dollars. Between our own courses that we represent, between foundation activities, and actually outside of the organization, all the other societies have their events that they're asking for industry support on. And a lot of our industry partners host events as well, independently, that may sometimes appear to be a conflict with some of the educational offerings that we are providing. So we're kind of straining a little bit sometimes for some of our smaller courses. Now, annual meeting, I love saying this, is it's kind of like it runs on its own. We well exceed our revenue goals for that meeting every year, and we're very pleased with how we're moving forward in that respect. But we do sometimes run into challenges with some of the smaller courses, specifically Fellows Day at SDSI and the Shoulder and Elbow course for residents and fellows. I think one of the things that kind of gets in our way where this group can really come into play is that when I do outreach for these courses, I'm reaching out to my peers at the organization. I don't have access to the high level individuals. I'm talking to their education managers, their meeting people, their conference people, and their compliance team, but not necessarily the decision makers. So kind of the process that it is right now is we develop a prospectus. I do the initial outreach. We apply through the grant portals we're required for some of the companies, not all. And then we wait to see if they're interested. What I think would be helpful is if we can work with this group to identify the KOLs for all of our industry partners, and even expanding to more the non-traditional suppliers that you just referenced, Dr. Sanchez-Sotelo, in the previous slide, the non-implant companies, and really find out who the decision makers are. And almost have this committee, and now I'm not saying find out who they are, and I'm going to pick up the phone and call the president of Stryker. I know that's not going to happen. That's first of all, I don't expect that they would take my call. But if we can identify who those people are and then do the outreach, have our group do the outreach to those people. So, for example, going back to Stryker, if we ever, and I should really just put this out there, Stryker is very, very supportive and very engaging with our initiatives, with our education initiatives that are out there. So I think that's a good example to use because it's one that we probably won't have to go into. But in that situation, if we were struggling to get support for one of those courses from Stryker, Dr. Sanchez-Sotelo maybe as a KOL, correct, Dr. JSS, and can maybe initiate that conversation, do the direct outreach to their more decision makers within the company, and let the directive then come from their decision makers for my counterparts to work with us to bring support to this course. So I think that's kind of one of the key ways that this group can work with our live education programs, is helping us speak to the right people to garner that support.
And I would just add to that, Angela brought up a point that I forgot to mention, but was in the slides that Joaquin presented. It would be great if you guys could kind of think outside the box a little bit. The Arthritis Foundation is partnering with the AOSSM to provide a lot of seed money for grants looking at shoulder arthritis, and that's AOSSM. That really should be coming to us. So our people, you guys, your committee should be thinking about who should we be talking to at the Arthritis Foundation, who should we be talking to with the osteoporosis group, because we take care of so many proximal humerus fractures, which are very common in that population. I mean, we have to kind of think a little bit outside the box about maybe Major League Baseball and the throwing and elbow injuries. I mean, be creative and try to think about who outside the realm of industry that we might be able to partner with on some of these ventures as well.
Well, I can respond to both of your comments in terms of identifying KOLs. When we built the committee over the last 2 years, we've been strengthening our membership on the committee with specific individuals to fill gaps that we have with certain industry members. So we have all the KOLs, and actually we did a volunteer recruitment. I mean, Steve did, and we went even beyond that, and we went to some real key individuals within the organization and reached out to them directly to say, hey, would you like to join the industry committee? So I think I shared that list with you, Dr. Sanchez-Sotelo, of who our KOLs are. And generally, in terms of all of our meetings, we're hitting the key decision makers, right, Dr. Jawa? Like, we have all those individuals identified. It's just a matter of maybe just sharing that with you, Angela, or communicating your end of it maybe a little bit better, or further with those individuals.
I'd love to have it too, Rob. I mean, I think it would be great if you could give it to the whole
group
absolutely
here.
So we have that this is all about intelligence and understanding.
Right. So we have a whole list of a directory, several pages of all of our industry members. We just keep adding to it and try to highlight who are those key players. And then, of course, the directory for the committee I can share with you as well. In terms of the other point, the Arthritis Foundation and everything, that's totally like on our radar coming out of our strategic plan and the funding task force, where we're trying to develop a subcommittee, which will probably fall under the industry committee and led by Dr. Byram and Dr. Diapala, to reach out to like local industry, to reach out to like FedEx or Amazon and Arthritis Foundation, find other avenues for support, the hospitals, the physical therapist organizations and all those. So that's really early in the stages of development, but it's certainly like on our strategic plan and one of our initiatives.
I would also add that I'm not sure if Dr. Hatzidakis and Dagan, if you have notes from our visits with industry that had happened during ASES annual meeting, because I think there were quite a few interesting comments that might be helpful. And I think Dr. Jawa Throckmorton can speak to it a little bit as to what we have learned from them.
Thank you, Anna. So why don't we go to Dr. Throckmorton, Queenie? Because I know you are traveling. Do you have anything you want to add? Because if you need to disconnect, please feel free. I know it's difficult.
No, I'm settled in my hotel now. So I was doing all that while I was listening. But Rob has done a great job of having us organized. I feel that a lot of what we did the last 4 years was get to the point where we do know the key players now. And I think now it's just a matter of making sure that everybody on this call has access to that information.
Perfect. Anything else you want to add, Queen, in terms of the presentation tonight, or any other ideas you have in mind?
No, great job. I mean, I think I heard the directive about that you gave about getting the high volume shoulder surgeons. We can certainly work on that. To me, that's the one thing that I've taken away. The rest of it, I think, is just keeping our train going and getting everybody else synced up.
Yeah, I did think that it was nice to summarize in bullet points, because it's incredible how much you guys are doing. Andy, any comments on your side?
No, I think this is great. I agree with Rob and Quinn. I think this is sort of what we've established. A little bit of background and history. When we initially started, we talked about talking to FedEx and Amazon and the MLB, and a lot of that really kind of fell short. We weren't able to make that work. That Arthritis Foundation is really interesting. I think re-energizing this is a good idea, but that's sort of how we all started. And I think we've come to a good place. I think important for us, Armando and Nilo, is that we need to really, and Angela's, get us all on the same page, because just even figuring out what the foundation supports and what ASES supports took us like 2 years to figure out. And I think getting you on that same page, because even some of those lists that Joaquin had was kind of a mix of both of those. And so we should sort that out. And I think the other thing that we're all going to have to work on is we're all working cohesively. So one of the things that we've sort of figured out over these calls with industry is it works best with a very narrow group of people, which is, me, Quinn, Rob, a KOL, and two or three of their sort of prime people who make decisions. We're a bigger group now, so we're going to have to figure out how do we organize to be as effective. Last point I make, which Armando gave this idea, which is maybe something that we should think about, is I think we're all being cannibalized internally. And a lot of people made comments about this because all the big players in our society, all the big KOLs have all their own meetings. And people are industry struggling to pay for all these different meetings. And I'm not sure if this is the group to manage that, but it's something that needs to be addressed. But it seems like it should be somehow addressed at some point in the next year or two as part of the strategic plan.
Just to add a little color to that, Andy, and we had a nice discussion. I also am involved with Stryker, and I was speaking to one of the folks that really drives strategy for Stryker, and they express some, how do I describe it? Maybe a little frustration, but just a little bit of uncertainty as how they're going to support initiatives in the future, because with all the different meetings that they see, they feel like either they have to not support some of these meetings or they have to hold back on developing new products. That was a direct quote. They're saying they're taking away budget on their development and just development research to try to make new products. So they're reaching that point, and they do see in some meetings, not all, and I certainly don't think ASES meetings, that they do see some extravagance that they feel like, well, wow, we're putting this money in. There's not a whole bunch of attendees other than the speakers in some cases, and then there's some extravagance to it that they feel like, wow, we're gonna have to cut down. So I would hate to see that cut, especially the core ASES funding. And so one of my goals is, like Andy said, is to understand what the foundation needs, what the society needs, for me to really split that and be a hammer for Angela, as I have been in the past to some extent, to try to support particular meetings and have deadlines and say we need this much money or this much in-kind equipment to make this meeting good. But also, how do we develop a value proposition to the companies where we say, listen, you will get exposure to this many people with this much potential revenue you can generate through ASES meetings, and this is why we need to really fund our ASES directives first before you consider the other stuff, and then just thinking about expanding the membership and figuring this out. I love the idea of reaching out to people who are high shoulder and elbow users that just don't think they get into ASES. I think that is the first step. I really like that.
Very good.
And I think
add something to it.
And I think I remember hearing that in the meeting, as one of the meetings as well, that, I mean, well, we all heard that there's such a proliferation of meetings. And I mean, we're doing it among ourselves too with National Shoulder and Elbow Week. I mean, right now we're pulling over $600,000 in sponsorships, right? And I've even heard it from Angela, like, Rob, you're taking some of my money, because the pie is only so big. They can't expand the pie. So it really does have to be reconciled. But I think I did recall hearing that, they just have to eventually evaluate all these regional meetings to see where's the ROI. If it's the same people at each one of these meetings, then it really comes down to it. And I think they were saying they would prioritize ASES, of course, and then what else can they add on top of that?
They really do want to expand to non-ASES surgeons, our companies that we work with, all of us. They really have a big interest. I think they see that as a growth segment, to go to the hip and knee guy who does 3 shoulder replacements a week. And so that may not meet our criteria for membership, but that's a real interest. That's interesting. I've heard it from many companies that's a growth segment for them. So, just something to think about as we move along with this and membership committee and all that. How do you get those people in the fold so that they're learning from us? Because a lot of those people aren't seeing Joaquin's lectures on, how to get a short stem right, and they're not seeing that. They're just doing it, they're winging it, or they're getting it online, and so it'd be great to get some of those people at some of these meetings, so they also get educated to do things to the ASES standard.
And I mean, is that
I,
like a question then about whether it's a closed meeting or an open meeting, or maybe one segment of it is open? I don't know.
I don't know.
And I want to kind of touch on that briefly is the annual meeting is actually the only meeting that is a closed meeting. All of our other meetings are not member restricted in attending. And what we did hear a lot, and I heard this through the grapevine, did not have the opportunity to sit in these meetings on site, but the feedback that I got is that a lot of these companies are also interested in reaching the newer surgeon, the fellows and the residents at that level. But the irony of that is, if that is a target outreach for them and a goal for them, the two courses that we're struggling the most with are more intro, more newer surgeon type courses. So I think that maybe another side of that is like probably a longer conversation to have is, are we offering the right education to reach the more advanced surgeons that are not ASES members? Now, we are introducing a new course and in the spring, a new revision course. And we have actually already had initial conversations with some industry, and we've got verbal, not contracted, but we do have verbal commitment for the three top sponsorship levels because it is something different. So again, I think it's going to be a matter of actually looking at not only our current education portfolio, but how we package and how we sell that portfolio of programs. So
Right. And what's also important, and this is not my strategy that was designed for this committee, but it might actually become one, is how do we recognize sponsors? So there is currently we combine ASES and the foundation recognition levels at the annual meeting. But what we are seeing is to get to a certain level, when you actually recognize them as combined, kind of puts them in a lower category on ASES or the foundation side. And we want to avoid that. So I can't say right now what is the right approach to that, because that was done based on the industry's request saying, oh, we are putting so much into foundation and some to ASES, but how come at annual meeting we are only recognized for what we are giving to the society? But it's the same token, when there is a certain level to meet or exceed, if they are already added combined, then they may not want to, or have a desire to really reach that level on either society or the foundation side. So it's a longer conversation, but perhaps if you could think about that as well, because Angela and I are already kind of thinking how we could accomplish that. I think that would be very useful in kind of motivating the sponsors to maybe up their levels at certain, for certain programs as well.
Just a quick question, Anna. How are the foundation member donors from the industry recognized now? I just can't think of it right now. Is there a slide at the meeting that they say thanks to this foundation, the supporters of the meeting, but also thanks to the foundation members, or how are they even recognized?
Yeah, go ahead, Angela.
Okay. So basically, as for the last few years, we have been grouping them together. So basically, once we get up into, the last months of the year, September, about a month before the annual meeting, Rob and his team tally all the dollars that came in through the foundation. Steve tabulates all the dollars that came in from industry for like the advertising and stuff like that. I tabulate all the dollars that come in through the meetings. We add them all together, and that puts them at a level: emerald, diamond, double diamond, ruby, sapphire, whatever the levels are. And then with that grouping, that's where we recognize them on the on meter boards and in the program guide and in the mobile app, on the exhibitor descriptions, etc. But again, we're looking at the overall spend, the total spend that they put to any of the arms of our organization, and that's how they're ranked and rated. So there is no like specific foundation. They gave this to foundation, they gave this to industry. I mean,
So
societies.
it is combined in the real meaning of that word as of now.
Can I ask, you said before that you had this committee before and you stopped because you wanted everything to go through the foundation. So what's happening now that you're trying to, in a way, split it up again? And tackle this through two separate avenues? Because it seems like it would make more sense for everything to be centralized.
And I think that is the key. But there wasn't representation necessarily from the society side.
Okay, on the
And
foundation, you mean?
so it was, and the committee, and this kind of predates my time with the society. I know it seems like I've been here forever, but I've only been here 3.5 years. That it was kind of like an inactive group. That was kind of just, there were a couple of chairs that were identified that occasionally we did outreach to them to help get us across the finish line with some industry partners on events, but they really weren't involved to the point of what the foundation has been doing, which was really doing the deep dive, having the conversations, finding out what our industry partners wanted. So it's almost like the foundation has done amazing work in that. And now
Right.
it's time, because we are hearing about some internal conflicts between the spend on the foundation side and the spend on the society side, that we need to be more cohesive in our approach when reaching industry. So that's why we were asked, to kind of look at and identify possibly some representation from the organization, from the society side, that can represent in these conversations moving forward. And that's
Yes,
where
and
Dr.
and
Hatsiakis and Dr. Dagan, you came into play.
And at the same token, historically, the funding for live events specifically has always been driven by staff. And the reason behind it is because a lot of questions being asked by industry about live events have to do with logistics and levels of support and so forth and so on. So it just made perfect sense, and it's still done. That's why it still does. That's why we have Angela, on this as liaison to this committee as combined, because a lot of times questions will come. You will kind of lead and have the decision makers say, yes, we are going to spend this money, but then the managers and the directors and the coordinators from those companies are going to come and ask a bunch of questions when it comes to live events. And that is where it is important that the staff person actually is knowledgeable in what's going on and actually is able 100% to answer those questions.
And I think that actually what you just said, Anna, opens up even another level of opportunity here. And that is to reapproach our deliverables that we offer for our live events.
Right.
Let's make sure that the deliverables that we're providing are what our industry partners actually want. It's kind of the standard laundry list, a half-page ad in the program guide, X amount of badges. Some of them at higher tiers will get a spotlight session at some of our programs, an exhibit tabletop display. Are those the things is that of value to our industry partners? Does that justify the spend that we're asking from them? So this might now be the point as well for this group to kind of look at what those deliverables are and make sure that those are the appropriate deliverables, because that could be what's sidelining us a little bit as well, that we're not we want their money, but we're not giving them what they need in exchange for those dollars.
It's an interesting discussion, in terms of the levels and reaching another level, because we've never, in the industry committee for the foundation, never really talked about that at all. We never really, I don't know, whether privy or whatever, or we weren't part of that conversation really. So, and it seems like it always happens at the end of the year, so you're not really aware of the different levels. It certainly would offer a lot of incentive if we had that and said, hey, if you just go up this, fellowship education grant and add another 50,000, you'd be at this additional level. But I think I would imagine it's more than just getting on the meter board in the program and on the app. If there's packages and they reach like another level and they're getting some additional benefits, I mean, that's an ideal situation, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, is that currently happening, or is it just the recognition at the annual meeting on those three channels?
They do get some incentives, like extra badges for the representatives and discounts on certain things, specifically advertising, because that doesn't cost us much or not much at all, other than staff time. So they do get some incentives for being annual sponsors, and that is something that we've been kind of talking about and trying to get across. But I think the concept is kind of still diluted to some degree, just because even though I have been developing annual proposals for annual sponsorships since I started with ASES or maybe 2 years thereafter when we introduced first industry as, sponsors at annual meetings. And at first it caught on, and we were able to really secure a lot of funds up front. And this was working well until about, I don't know, 2, 3 years ago, when it turns out that they cannot guarantee, even if they have annual proposal, which I appreciate because they need it for budgeting purposes, but you still have to apply for every single program on that proposal separately because of compliance. So maybe there is a way to reintroduce it somehow, and even provide more benefits for annual sponsors who actually do kind of pre-commit to those, packages. And if they don't, then we would just pull away those extra, benefits that they could have had.
And I think all those things are great to discuss in follow-up conversations too, because each of them has, so much to basically peel out, understand. But I think tonight's goal was basically to have like a kickoff call where we have the strategic plan outlined and we agree on what are the tasks that you guys can do, sharing these two initiatives and working together. The other committee that was unsaid, Nilo, was very, very, very large and it wasn't very, very effective. So that's why we thought the foundation is better positioned for that. But we still need some presence by ASES, and I'm really grateful that yourself and Armand will be willing to do it. So what I was thinking about doing as a follow-up is send you guys an email tomorrow with like a summary of these slides. If you guys think that represents what the committees have been doing, understanding that the strategic plan is 5 years, so you don't have to accomplish everything in 1 year. And there may be things in the second slide that are for the future that maybe will take 2 or 3 years, and that's okay. Like I said, I'm really impressed about what is already happening, and hopefully we have to find a way, I think, to understand, like you guys said, when we have one activity like the ASES Fellows Day, can we actually fund it completely with industry, or do we have to go to the foundation money because industry already paid the foundation? I don't think we have figured out that yet, but I think we will.
Joaquin, quick question. I feel like to be effective, to accomplish the ACS goals and serve the most effectively, I feel like I need to understand the comprehensive picture a little bit better. So would it be possible for Nilo and I to be, and I'm not volunteering Nilo, so certainly feel free to object, but to attend the membership committee or the finance committee meetings and just listen and learn, because even, trying to understand this dynamic of when the ACS needs money from the foundation to get things. What is the membership committee's goals? What's the executive team's goals to increase or keep memberships the same? Who do they want? I think it'd be really helpful. So then Nilo and I can then go on the attack and accomplish the directives.
Yeah,
Have some access?
yeah, no problem. I mean, we just have some calls scheduled. I think Steve has sent most of the invitations, Angela Simpson. So if you guys want to add Dr. Hatzidakis to the calls, I think that's perfectly fine.
Well,
You know what else?
whatever you feel it would be helpful for us to learn, so we understand the whole picture. So when we talk to, let's say, one sponsor and say, listen, we need this for this, and they say, well, we already gave to this, and you're asking for this, then if we understand that ahead of time, then we know, and we can say, we understand you've already donated this, but we really need your help with this, that kind of conversation.
Yeah, I think especially on the membership side, I think there's I think the society needs to decide what the overall goal is. Is it still to sort of be exclusive and closed, hence numbers are low, or is it to grow and get just bums in the seats and anyone to be a member so you grow? And I think that's kind of driven by the membership committee or just the society's
Exec team
strategic plan. So it's hard for us to kind of step on that because there's a strategic thing in place right now. So it'd be interesting to know what the goals are so we can kind of work within the confines of what's been outlined.
But
Yeah.
if you're interested, I think the document is on the website, is it not, Anna? The whole 5-year plan?
Yes. In members only section.
Yeah, so
Right.
it's about 12 pages long, and you can download it and see all the different things that are going forward and moving forward to help us grow and maybe how these things would interconnect. And that might be good to peruse.
with the stamp of Kuhn on it.
It wasn't me. It was a huge committee and a huge effort.
But he led the effort very, very well, Hernan. Well, if you guys have any more questions, we have about 2 or 3 minutes. This was a very productive call, at least for me, to listen to everyone. And I really want to thank you all for everything you do for ASES and the foundation. Anything else? Any last words by anyone that is still, Angela? You have one?
I just want to make one more kind of task that might make sense for you, Dr. Hatzidakis and Dr. Dagan. It might make sense for you all to participate in the kickoff calls for the courses that we're having with the co-chairs. Because if we bring you on from the get-go to kind of hear what the course is about and what the agenda is going to be, it might be helpful when we reach the point where we have to do some additional industry outreach. So obviously resident courses in 2 weeks. So that one we're kind of, Dr. Sanchez-Sotelo is one of the co-chairs of that course. We're kind of past that point. At this point, we're down to the final stages, but I do have a kickoff call for Fellows Day scheduled for December that if I'll forward the invitation to you all. If you're available, please. I know it's kind of short notice, but I think that might kind of make sense just to kind of hear what the strategy is.
Great idea. Happy to.
Okay,
And then to hear some feedback after the residence course to what went well, what needed improvement. And then just one question for Joaquin: what's our cadence? When are we meeting next? And what would you, or Andy and Quinn, what would you like us to do in the interim between now and the next meeting? What's our marching orders?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is the four of us need to meet and see how this actually logistically works. I think this expansion could be effective, but I think there are a lot of cooks and we got to figure it out. And then we can bring you up to speed of what has really taken us 3 years to figure out all these questions you're asking. I think there are definitely lanes that we need to keep tight and not go into other lanes, which we made that error initially. So I think we should meet and just try and figure that all out together.
So are you going to schedule that, Andy, or are you going to send
we could take this offline and we can schedule that, the four of us.
Sounds good.
Did you want Rob and I on that call?
Let's just make it one of our monthly calls, Rob.
Yeah.
And we'll just have Nilo and Armando on there, and like we don't need to have another call to do that. We're at a time right now where we can take a meeting and sort through that.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I hope you guys have a good night. If there is no other questions or comments, thank you for everything you do, and thank you for connecting tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. This is great.
This will be great.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Looking forward to it. Hey, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.